Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thanks for calling this important hearing, and welcome to our very distinguished panel. I am the prime author of the Bipartisan Trafficking Victims Protection Act of 2000, and among some of its provisions, there are dozens of mutually reinforcing provisions. We established a tier system, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. Tier 3 for the most egregious violators not doing anything or complicit in human trafficking within their country in the areas of prevention, prosecution, and protection. I've been very concerned, and I've held dozens of hearings over the years with both administrations, all administrations, and we keep getting from the TIP office, ambassador at large, and from people in the TIP office how there's almost like a hand-to-hand combat when certain nations are put on tier 3, and many of our bureau chiefs, especially the assistant secretaries for the region, argue and don't do it. There are other equities that we need to be concerned about, and my argument has always been, get it right. What you do on the sanctions piece, which is prescribed in the law as well, prescribed I should say, is purely up to the administration. But getting it right on the facts, it should be non-negotiable. And yet the most egregious example there was during the Obama administration when Reuters broke the story that there were more than a dozen nations that got artificially inflated grades because of other issues. So I had 2 hearings on that. And you know, said, don't do that. You sell out the victims. Now, I am concerned that we get the integrity right on the process, and ditto for the International Religious Freedom Act, so that, you know, call it the way it is. What we do on the sanctions piece, you know, is something that the Secretary of State and the President can negotiate. And I'm wondering what your thoughts are now as we're going through this whole revamping. And Secretary Rubio, I do believe, is very strongly committed to both religious freedom and to trafficking issues. How do we ensure the integrity of the process, getting it right? Those bureaus need to be as independent as possible, in my opinion. The TIP office is made up of wonderful people who work overtime, and each embassy, as you know, Mr. Ambassador, you know, tender all of the data back as to what's going on in that individual country. How do we ensure that those, and there are other offices as well, but religious freedom and trafficking in persons, how do we ensure the integrity of that process? Yes, please.
Thanks so much, Representative Smith. I would say from my own experience, I have seen how the TVPA affects change on the ground in the tier ranking system. And I would say in my role as Undersecretary, I enjoyed very close collaboration with my counterpart, the Undersecretary for Political Affairs, and colleagues from regional bureaus in really focusing on the countries that we were seeing a degradation in conditions, but also recognizing opportunities for progress. I want to highlight 2. Together, the Office to Combat Trafficking in Persons, working with civil society and the private sector, worked tirelessly to successfully eradicate child and forced labor from the cotton industry in Uzbekistan. That might sound like an issue far away in a land that doesn't matter to Americans. It does matter to the U.S. cotton industry, who cannot compete against forced labor-produced products. This is why I am so concerned about subsuming this office, which really enjoys unrivaled global leadership on this mission to end human slavery, into the Bureau of Population, Refugees, and Migration. The legal definition of human trafficking does not require movement across international borders. So I am quite worried that that is a downgrade that will really undercut efforts to end exploitation of some of the most vulnerable people at a moment where we're really making progress. I've also seen in the case of allies like the Republic of Korea, a downgrade to tier 2 really produced a tremendous amount of effort and engagement where we saw improvements where they were able to move back up to tier 1. So the ranking system, I think, has had a very positive effect, although many didn't like it when it came out, in affecting change.
If I may briefly add to this, I was ambassador to Albania, and boy, this was one of my top priorities. I haven't been too kind to soft power in my statement and some of my comments here today, but this is an example that I think for the committee to look at where soft power can work, because first of all, it reflects values that across the board Americans believe in, because this is terrible stuff. Secondly, it is something that is concrete that you can get governments to stop without changing their whole outlook to the universe, their philosophy, their religious background, and everything else. Much of what we do is broad. You've got to look like Denmark, or you've got to look like, Washington, D.C. This is very specific. We monitor it closely, and you bet I was always trying to get Albania raised one level higher, and you can bet I was beaten down because we had concrete standards to go by. That's what the Secretary should continue to enforce, because it represents the will of not only the Congress, but the American people.
Thank you, Representative Smith. Representative Castro.